Babe, I was thinking of you today, and I bought you this book.
Oh, thanks. You're so thoughtful, and you're so good looking, and so smart. I love you.
Let's get into that. Good morning, everybody. I'm Nate.
I'm Andrea.
And this is Marriage Monday. This is a show we do here on the Marriage by Design channel every Monday, where we take a look at God's design for marriage, what the Bible says about how we should treat each other as husbands and wives, as well as practical topics that we can talk about to hopefully encourage you in your marriage.
Yeah. So we are talking about Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages this month. Last week we just kind of previewed it and gave you an idea what all the 5 love languages are and challenged you to take the test. Hopefully you did that. To just know how your love languages rank for you. And then today we're getting into 2 of the love languages. So we're going to talk about words of affirmation and gifts.
That's right. So words of affirmation and receiving gifts are 2 of the 5 love languages. And the way that we're going to kind of have the flow go for these next couple of episodes is we're going to kind of preview the topic a little bit and then give you some dialects. So if you remember, the book is called 5 Love Languages. And really his analogy that he uses throughout the book is that each of the 5 love languages, take words of affirmation, for example, he equates to a foreign language, right? Like English or Spanish or whatever. And if I speak Spanish and that's it, and Andrea speaks German and that's it, we're going to have a very difficult time communicating effectively with each other. And what he's saying is, from a love languages standpoint, if I only teach myself to speak words of affirmation, and Andrea only teaches herself how to speak receiving gifts or giving gifts, then we're going to have a really difficult time showing each other that we love one another. So a big part of the challenge for the 5 love languages is that we really need to teach ourselves to be multilingual.
Yeah, and then talking about the dialects within that.
Right, you know? So go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just talking about how each of those love languages then have differences and variances within that. And then we also want to talk about examples or practical ways that you can implement the love languages.
Exactly. So let's dive in straight away with words of affirmation. So give us kind of an idea of what words of affirmation is generally, babe, and then we'll jump into dialects.
Yeah, so words of affirmation is just telling another person the things that you appreciate about them or things that you recognize about them that you love, ways that you love or respect them. A great way is just to think, I like you or I love you, and then why. Telling the why is some more words of affirmation. Maybe saying that you're proud of them for something. All of those are kind of just words of affirmation. Just taking the things that are in your head that are good things and dumping them out and having them come out of your mouth.
Right. So one place where you probably have seen words of affirmation in glaring display in the world around you is if you've ever been to a funeral.
Right.
So oftentimes at funerals, there is a parade of people that go up to the microphone or mill about the room if it's a visitation. And the focus of everyone is celebrating the life of whoever it is that has passed away. And so there's a lot of words of affirmation that are going around about that person. And
most of those things were never said to the person. It's crazy, you guys. We say the nicest things about people once they're not able to hear them any longer. And so I would really encourage you to stop, to start saying the good things that you're thinking.
Yeah.
And say them to everybody that you think them about.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and that's really what words of affirmation is all about, is us training ourselves to, 1, think positive things about the other person, and 2, express those positive things to them. That's really what words of affirmation is all about.
Yeah.
And there's really three main dialects of this that we want to talk about. And again, this is not comprehensive, right? I mean, you may think of 4, 5, 6, 10 other dialects within this love language that you think, well, what I'm thinking of doesn't really fit into any of these three. That's great, and you're probably right. This is just kind of the three main ones to think about as we think about that. So the three are encouraging words, kind words, and humble words. So with regards to encouraging words, that is kind of what you described, right? Things that you really like about the other person.
Yep.
Oftentimes these are the funeral statements, right? This person was really good at this. This person, I really loved when they did this. Those are words of encouragement. Vitally important, particularly for someone that receives love through that avenue.
Yeah, and I want to say too that if you've taken the love languages test, you'll have love languages that are your, higher or ranked higher. But we should be looking to always be speaking every love language to our spouse because they all are important and should all be used. But if my spouse is a words of affirmation, if that's like their top, then I'm going to be looking to do that the most.
Right. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, babe, because you're right, and that's an important thing that goes back to what I said earlier about we really need to train ourselves to be multilingual, where we speak, the love languages that come naturally to you probably speak pretty well, but learning those other 1, 2, or 3 love languages that are pretty lower on your list, being able to learn how do I speak those well is really important it's contagious. It's really important for being able to love our spouse in all those different areas, and not just our spouse, but our kids and our friends and those people that are close in our lives, because love languages, unlike some of the other things that we talk about on this channel that are specific to marriage, love languages apply to your friends and your parents and your children and all the people that the Lord brings into your life. Right. So encouraging words. The second one is kind words.
Kind words, yeah.
Right. So kind words.
So what's the difference?
So when we think about kind words oftentimes can have to do not just with what you say, but with how you say it.
So if I tell you, well, you look pretty good today.
Right. That tells me something other than I think what you meant to say. That's a perfect example. The example he gives in the book is if I look you in the eyes and I say, I love you, versus if I look you in the eyes and go, I love you? One is a question, one is a statement. Those say two very different things to the other person.
Of course.
So you can say things, and as you correctly pointed out, there is one really big thing that can get in the way of kind words. Do you know what it is, babe? It starts with an S.
Nope.
Sarcasm.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
So sarcasm within a marriage can really wreck kind words.
The only S word I get was snake, and that wasn't it for sure.
Yeah, snakes can get in your way in marriage, but not with regards to kind words. So yeah, kind words have a lot to do with how you say what you're saying. Oh my.
Sorry.
So,
okay, back at it.
So the question is, when you speak to your spouse, how are you speaking to them? And this is something that I'm just being transparent that I personally need to grow in, because I can be a huffer and I can show my frustration, and that isn't right to do that. So kind words really has to do with how am I communicating to the other person. Sure. And oftentimes sarcasm plays a big role in that. Right. And we've talked about this on this channel before, but it's worth noting again, particularly guys, stop the sarcasm. We've got to cut it out, because it might work great with your buddies. Your wife's not one of the guys. So we got to be super careful about that, because sarcasm, one of my really good friends describes sarcasm rightly as like when you stab someone with a knife through a pillow. And I think that's a pretty good way of describing it.
Sure.
Because it's, sarcasm is the part of it that stings is the part that's honest.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like said in this jokey way where you
like, am I being honest? Or
right.
not?
And really, why it can be so devastating on our spouses is because they know sarcasm is like the love language of America, frankly. So, we all use it with all of our friends. And so within marriage, it's like, okay, well, I probably shouldn't be getting upset about this, but it really hurt me. But if I show that it really hurt me, then he or she's going to be like, just buck up. I'm just having fun. I'm just joking. And so it puts our spouse in this awkward position where they're hurt, but they think they shouldn't be hurt. And then resentment can come in, and that gives a foothold to bitterness and all on down the line. That's a lot of junk. Exactly. Yep. So don't let it become that, and start with focusing on kind words.
Yep.
And that should be period, but particularly if your spouse deals with desiring words of affirmation, unkind words are really going to crush them.
Yeah, kind words and attitudes.
Right.
Yeah. And then the third one is humble words, right?
Humble words.
All right. So tell me about that.
Right. So humble words deals with how we treat each other in the way we speak to each other from a
relationship standing.
Right. That's a good way. That's a really good way of putting it. So the way that he describes marriage in here is two equal adult partners when he's talking about humble words.
So, like, I'm not married to a child.
That's right.
And I don't need to treat my spouse like a child.
That's right. Listen, this is a huge problem within marriage. We get couples that we talk with all the time where when they leave at the end of our conversation, Andrea and I look at each other and go, she treats him like a child. Mm-hmm. And it is devastating. And in the similar way that my opinion is that the sarcasm, the kind words, sort of applies more to guys than it applies to girls, I would say the opposite is true with humble words. Mm-hmm. With regards to treating our spouses like a child, I see way more wives that treat their husbands in demeaning, belittling, emasculating ways. And it is so devastating for your marriage.
Yeah, so the funny thing is it might not even be words of affirmation that you're using. It might just be, I'm loving my spouse by the way that I'm saying something. Like, for example, hey, you said you were going to clean out the sink. It's starting to stink. Can you clean out the sink? Or maybe you need to preface that with, I love you. The sink isn't cleaned out yet, and it's really starting to stink. Can you clean out the sink? Rather than, well, you said you were going to clean out the sink, and yet again, it's not cleaned out, and it's starting to stink. So are you going to do that?
Right. See the difference in, we're not talking specifically about affirming words, but for me, particularly as someone that humble words is a dialect for me, when I hear the first way you said it, the right way, the loving way, that is affirming words to me.
Because for you, it's not I have to do this in order for you to accept me.
Exactly right.
You have in the past struggled with that.
Exactly right. So if you have a spouse, or maybe you yourself struggle with feeling a pressure to perform, and the way that I kind of describe that is if you feel like you have to earn other people's love for you, then this is probably a big one for you in how we speak to each other with regards to using humble words, right? Andrea has every right in the physical to use the second way that she said that, out of frustration and anger, because clearly it was something in her example that we had a conversation about before, and I didn't hold up my end of the bargain. That's where the humility comes in, is rather than choosing to exercise her right to be upset about it, she's choosing to humble herself and come back to me in an affirming way, in the way that she handles that situation.
This is a big struggle for me. This is one that's hard for me, for sure. In the day-to-day.
Yeah, so important though. So encouraging words, saying nice things to your spouse, Kind words, it's all about how you speak to your spouse. And then humble words, speaking to your spouse in a way and using words that make sure they recognize you are equal adult partners within your marriage. So what are some tips, babe, examples, practical encouragements that we can talk about as we implement words of encouragement?
One great thing is start writing down the things that you're...
That's great. That's the
good
one.
things that you're thinking about your spouse, and then sharing that with them. So it may be too much of an interruption to text them or call them or whatever every time you think a good thing about them. So instead, just jot them down real quick throughout the day, or jot down a few of them that you think throughout the day, and then share that with them. That would be amazing.
Yep.
And it's fun too for your spouse then to know you really thought about these things throughout the day. Like, you were just thinking about me and these pop in your head, whatever. So that's a great one to do. And
as a practical pointer for that, set up a text message chain with yourself. I mean, that's an easy way to do it.
Sure.
Right? Just text yourself when you think of something nice about your spouse, or he or she does something that you don't want to forget, but maybe you don't want to say something right at the moment, or you can't say something right at the moment. Text yourself.
Sure.
And then you have kind of a running chain of those things as you've thought of them.
When they have accomplishments at work or otherwise, affirm them in that.
That's right.
Don't just smile and nod when they talk to you, but affirm them in that and kind of puff them up, puff up your spouse in that area.
Yeah. Interestingly, if you're being honest with yourself, if you struggle with competitive emotions with regards to your spouse, in other words, when your spouse accomplishes something and you're being honest with yourself, your first internal feeling is one of jealousy or a little bit of like, oh, I wish I'd have done something. Here's the encouragement that I would give you. Remember, when we look at what God says about marriage, the man shall leave his father and mother and join to his wife, and
the two shall become one.
The two shall become one. So what you need to do is start reminding yourself before the Lord that when your spouse accomplishes something,
that's your accomplishment too.
It's your accomplishment too, because you are one.
Right.
So when you celebrate him or her and their accomplishment, in a way you're also celebrating your own accomplishment. Mm-hmm. Because as a couple, as one, you have accomplished this thing.
Right.
And I think that can really take the sting out of a wedge I think Satan tries to use of that, sort of jealousy within your marriage.
Yeah. So, just kind of puffing them up when they do have, when they have an accomplishment. I think also recognizing those things that are hard for them and that you notice that they're working on. Maybe that's in the way that they're loving you. Maybe has nothing to do with your marriage, but they're working hard in something and they have some success in that. That's so great to recognize that and say it to them.
Yep.
I don't know, what are some other things you can think of?
Paul talks in the Bible about taking every thought captive. If you struggle with kind words or humble words, oftentimes those are habitual behaviors, meaning you have created a habit in your life where when your spouse says something to you about maybe it's asking you to do something, maybe it's about a certain topic, right? Maybe it's your budget or the kids or whatever. You may have created a habit in your life where you just automatically huff, or you just automatically roll your eyes or shoot back with a sarcastic remark or whatever. Those are bad habits, just like any other habitual behavior. That's broken only by choosing to break it. And I bring up Paul's words and encouragement about taking every thought captive because what you probably need to do is create a habit of just slowing down, right? When your spouse says something to you, use that as a reminder to, okay, for the next 10 seconds, I want to think about everything I do, because that's how we're going to break that bad habit, is by taking it just a second at a time to try and break out of those ruts that we've created.
That's good.
Babe, the final word on words of affirmation, what would you say?
Start saying what you're thinking. The good things. I don't know.
Yeah, it's good.
Just to not just your spouse, to every relationship that you have.
That's right.
People need to know.
That's right. That's right. And I would say choose, particularly if your spouse scored high in this area, commit to 30 days of saying something intentionally nice to your spouse every single one of those 30 days. And here's the other thing. If your spouse says something nice to you, do not return it with something nice about them immediately. One thing we need to learn to do is learn to receive a compliment. So just responding with, thank you for noticing that, or thank you for speaking to me that way. It reaffirms to your spouse, this really means something to me. And it doesn't fall into the trap of minimizing it by going, oh, she's just saying that to me because she wants me to say something to her. Right? It is, hey, thank you for saying that about me. Thank you for recognizing that. And then later you can circle back and say, I've been thinking about you and here's something I like about you. So anyway, commit to it for 30 days and don't hesitate to say thank you when your spouse says something affirming to you.
Cool.
Awesome. All right.
Next one.
Kick it off.
Is gifts. So gifts seems pretty obvious, right? It can be a whole lot of different things, but it's usually giving somebody something.
Whoa, you mean like a gift?
Oh yeah. Gifts can be something that you just buy and give somebody. It can be something that you make, something that whatever. It can be a whole lot of different things. And then gifts kind of also is a funny language because it can dip into some of the other ones. Like, gift you time together. Sure. It can be a gift of an act of service.
Yep.
So it can be, gifts can kind of cross into different love languages too. But oftentimes we think of gifts as a physical thing.
And I would even say that that's a sort of masters in the 5 love languages way of thinking, what you just said a minute ago. If you're really big into gifts, and I know a lot of people that are really big into giving gifts, that is a mindset that you enter into, right? You're out and you see something and you think, man, this reminds me of so-and-so, I should give it to them as a gift. And that's what gets the endorphins going and reaffirms to you, oh, this is great, I'm giving someone a gift. The master's level way of thinking about that is, if, let's say your spouse is a words of affirmation person, if you can train yourself to think, man, I can really give them a gift of affirming words. It helps, because you're right, a lot of these can be interconnected.
Totally.
As you think about these 5 love languages. And I think it can really be helpful to think about, man, I can really give Andrea this huge gift if I make a point to write her an affirming note.
Yep.
And now it feels great for me because I'm a gifts person, and it feels great for you because you're a words of affirmation person. So a lot of these do tie together for sure.
Yeah.
So what are the 2 main dialects for gifts?
Well, one is gifts of money. So something that cost you something. Does it always have to be lots though?
No. Lots of money?
It does. It does.
Wait.
No, I'm kidding.
Wait
a
minute.
Gifts is...
Let's close in prayer.
It's a fun one because it can be something that costs a lot or costs little, or maybe it costs a little but it costs a lot of time, effort, thought, whatever. Yep. So gifts can be unique in that maybe you had to put a lot of extra thought into it, but it didn't take really that much money. So that's fun too. Sure. You don't have to have a big budget for being married to somebody who is high in gifts.
Right. Or maybe it's neither, right? I mean, maybe he tells a story in the book of a guy that hadn't given his wife a gift in years, and there was a guy across the street selling roses, And he bought a rose for probably $2 and gave it to his wife on the way home from work. That took almost no time and almost no money, and it meant the world to her because she could recognize the true gift wasn't the rose, it was the gift of changing the way he was thinking about her love.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm not really big on gifts, but I mean, I like gifts, but I don't really from Nathan like them for my birthday or for Christmas or whatever. I feel like they're obligatory.
Sure.
I prefer random gifts that he was like, oh my gosh, I thought you would love this, or I knew you said you wanted this, or whatever. So for me, I guess that would be my quote dialect in gifts, is that I want them to be something that you are only giving me just because you have thought of me or you think that I would really like this or whatever, not because they're obligatory. So yeah, gifts.
So the first one is physical gifts and or money.
Right.
Okay, how about the second one?
And then the next one is gifts of self.
So what's that look like?
So, really giving of yourself, and that can kind of look like quality time.
Yeah, oftentimes does look like that.
Right. So an example that Gary Chapman gives in the Bible, in the 5 love languages. The Bible of 5 love languages. Right. Of what not to do is that this guy came in and they were talking, and the wife was saying she was so hurt because they had a baby, and he stayed for 10 minutes. He stayed long enough. That is mind-blowing. He stayed long enough for the baby to be born and left 10 minutes later to go play softball with his guy friends. And that she was so hurt by that.
Yeah, I would think.
Right, and I would be too. Because he wasn't spending the time there. I mean, she didn't need him there to do anything really. She just wanted him there. They're partners in marriage. They're partners in having this baby, and she just wanted him there. And so gift of self would have been a huge thing for them in that circumstance where he's sacrificing his softball game, to be there with his wife and a new child, just to be there.
That's right.
So gift of self can be just being there. I remember, I don't remember what happened, but it was several years ago, and something really, really very sad had happened. And I remember you just came home. It was like the middle of the day, and you just came home to be with me. It wasn't that you thought you could fix anything. It wasn't that I wanted to talk to you or whatever, but you just came home to be. And that was a huge gift of self, and it meant so much to me because he was giving up the time that he needed to be at work and all that sort of thing to just be. And he was being in a hard situation, and he was choosing that.
It's a good call, babe. I appreciate that. I would say if you want a biblical example of this, I would encourage you to turn in the Old Testament to the book of Job. So when you look at Job was a man whom the Lord allowed to be tested in some really devastating ways.
Yeah, he suffered a lot.
And when he was in the midst of his suffering, he had some friends who wanted to help. And they didn't understand what he was going through. But, they came to be with him. And for a period of a week, think of this, for a week, they just sat with him. No speaking, no nothing, just sitting for a week. And interestingly, in the book of Job, once they were done sitting with him for a week, they started trying to give him advice, which was almost universally horrible advice.
Right.
And the Lord ended up bringing some pretty swift truth to the things that they were saying. But the point is, they gave a gift of themselves. Right. A way to think of this is a sacrificial gift to your spouse. So it might be sacrificing something that you want to do something that they want to do. It might be sacrificing, pursuing your own endeavor so that you can pursue their endeavor. These are all gifts, right? Gifts of yourself.
Yep.
So, babe, before we hang it up for this episode, I do think we need to pause a minute on gifts and talk about what can be some barriers to those of us who have spouses who are receiving gifts, people.
Sure. So, money can be a barrier.
How so, babe?
Just in how you both view money. So Nathan
not us specifically, but it's some friends of ours, babe. How do those friends of ours think about?
This is not something we've ever experienced. No, I am a saver. I'm not a spender. I don't think it's necessary to spend money except on the necessities.
And we're talking bare necessities. Right.
Nathan is the opposite. He loves to spend money, and he loves.
Take it with you, babe.
I know, and he finds joy in buying the newest and the greatest, and all that dumb stuff. So,
that is screwing up gifts and affirming words all in the same episode.
So, of course, I'm right and he's wrong, but we deal with that in our marriage, and someday he'll learn. Anyway.
Have a hobby for that.
And he's got hobbies upon hobbies upon hobbies. He's always been a collector and a hobby guy, and he hops around from hobby to hobby. So those are they always cost money. But we joke about it, and it's something that's become funny for us. So where was I? So with gifts, if you have one of you who really enjoys receiving gifts, that person probably is also not really the penny pincher in your marriage.
Probably not.
And then the other person is a penny pincher. That can really be hard because it's hard for me to give gifts when I'm really trying to save money, or maybe money's tight and you both know it and agree upon that. And one of you is still a gift person. Those can be some barriers. Or the person who is gifts us high, they're probably trying to love the other by giving gifts because we naturally try to speak that language that we're high on. And to the spouse then, so Nathan's more of a gifts person than I am, a lot more, and he's also not a penny pincher. So when he gives me gifts, sometimes my thought is, I wish he just wouldn't have spent the money on this, but really I need to shut my mouth because he's trying to love me. And maybe at a later date, I can tell him, I really love the gifts that you give me that don't cost much money. Or I really love the gifts of self that you give me. Again, I'm not criticizing a gift. I'm not criticizing him. But I'm taking it to a different time and just planting those thoughts in his head of the types of gifts that I really do like.
Sure.
Or kind of gives me anxiety when you spend a lot of money on a gift.
Yeah, and this is another thing too. I mean, we've been married for almost 15 years now, and I don't have a history of bankrupting our family. Right, so that's another piece of it is, yes, I spend way more money than you would spend if it was just you. But I've not put us in financial ruin.
Yeah, he does buy me gifts sometimes that I'm like, oh my gosh, why did you spend that kind of money? But he doesn't put us in financial ruin. He just spends more money than I would prefer that he spend at times on gifts. But most of those gifts I end up really loving. And so I've learned to keep my mouth shut.
And my point in this is, right, and I appreciate that. My point in this is, you may be in a situation where you have a history of making poor decisions with money, and you have a desire to give gifts, and you may need to recognize, I have a problem. That I am not good with money, I don't manage my money well, and I need to put I need to serve my spouse by giving a gift of myself in that I'm not going to buy all of these other
that's
expensive gifts and things that I would otherwise like to buy because I need to learn better how to manage our family's finances.
And maybe you need to take financial peace.
Right, which we would strongly encourage.
Yeah.
Totally agree with that. Okay, any practical points other than spend or saver?
I think
for giving gifts?
A great practical point for gifts is to listen well.
Good one.
So
nailed it.
Maybe you're not given direct hints from your spouse, but if you're listening well to your spouse, I think you'll pick up on gift ideas over time that can really be those meaningful gifts. And those are so fun to give gifts that your spouse like wasn't ever expecting or thinking about, but you give something that's meaningful, kind of coming in from the side and doing that, surprising them. It's so fun.
It's a great call, babe. I read an article one time about a guy that it was written from the perspective of his kids, but who carried around a notebook in his back pocket. And when his wife would point out things she liked, or the kids would point out things that they liked, he would get out the notebook and open up a page and make a note. Mm-hmm. And same thing, if he saw something that he appreciated about them, he'd write it down. And so, that probably to his kids seemed really silly to them at the time, but ended up being something that they found really valuable. Well, now we all carry a computer processor around with us in our pocket all the time. So make use of that, right? Mm-hmm. We talked about it with regards to words of affirmation, but make use of that too with regards to gifts. I mean, heck, at this point, if your wife or husband sees something that they like, you can take a picture of the item and the SKU if you wanted to be able to look it up online, because maybe you're a saver and maybe you can find it for cheaper online. Can. So anyway, the point is, man, that's a great tool for keeping track. Because I'll tell you what, you want mad gifts points, you show up with a surprise gift of something that your wife or husband admired 3 months ago, one time, they just happened to mention it, and then they've probably forgotten about it, so it's a true surprise gift, and they're going to get it and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe you remembered this. Mm-hmm. And they don't got to know that you actually made a note of it in your phone and set a reminder for 3 months to be reminded about it. Perfect.
Yeah.
Right? Made it
so
easy.
Fun.
Cool.
You know my favorite gift from you? This is going to surprise you. Long time ago, this is probably 9 years ago, we were at Kohl's together shopping, and you had seen this skirt that you were like, that would look really great, and I was like, no, it would not. That would not look well. That would not look good. And you decided to get it for me anyway. I mean, I was there, and you got it for me anyway, and he was like, no, this would look really good. You need to have it. So he gave it to me, and I wore it, and I loved it.
Really?
Yep, that's probably.
I don't even remember the skirt.
I remember exactly what it looked like.
Do you still have it?
I don't, because it got a tear in it like years later, and I was so sad. But it was such a cute skirt, and I got lots of compliments on it, and it was super cute. I don't know, just the fact that you thought Nathan's really good at women's fashion, but
I'm gonna edit that part out.
Just the fact that you thought about me and that you, I don't know, that you did all that. That's probably would have been one of my most favorite gifts. Isn't that funny? That's
the value of an impactful gift. The receiver remembers it long after the giver remembers it. Because I honestly don't even remember that situation. So funny. Awesome. Anything else, babe? The final word on gifts? Where would you say gifts ranks for you?
Second to last.
Second to last.
Except some days it's like the first.
Nice. And affirming words, I didn't ask you. Where does that rank for you?
I don't know. Probably in the middle.
In the middle.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's probably higher than it used to be before I had kids, because kids just knock you down a lot.
Truth. See Family Friday.
Yeah. But yeah, it's probably, I would say words is probably in the middle.
Okay. Yeah, I would say, words of affirmation for me is number one.
Yeah, or gifts.
And then gifts is probably second from the bottom. A distant second from the bottom. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Cool, guys. Well, I hope you found this beneficial. I hope it gives you some ideas of things to think about as you try to become more multilingual in the way that you love your spouse and those others around you. Next week, we will tackle another 2 of the love languages, and then we'll finish them up. We're going to do acts of service in week 4, which leaves, let's see if I can back into this, physical touch and quality time next week. So, guys, hope to see you there. Until then, we've got Testosterone Tuesday, Women Power Wednesday. We're going to keep looking at Philippians in Thirsty Thursday. And then we have our continuing interview with Jordan and Brandon that will be on Family Friday. I really hope you guys are finding that beneficial. I know it's been really impactful for us. So can't wait to share that with you guys again this coming Friday. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. And remember, God is for your marriage. Have a good one.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.